From the news that Vivian Oguchi read, we've seen that a lot of economic activities have happened from yesterday until now. So let's take a deeper look at some of the news stories. Idausa Osamanze, Director, Research and Policy, Africa Development Studies Center, is here. There's something about what he's wearing that tells me he's ready to go sporty this weekend. I see a t-shirt. Good morning, sir.
Bless you, you're always calling me out.
Yes, because you have a way of saying things with the way you dress. It's either you are now hopeful to become honorable or you're planning to go sporty.
You can imagine that some people are getting to be honored, so I want to be in the league.
That's good to know. Vivian, how are you doing this morning? You look good.
Thank you. You look good. I mean, was there a discussion overnight?
I think our spirit discussed.
I agree.
Oh my God.
All right, like I said, a lot of economic activities have taken place from yesterday until now. Let's begin looking at a story where the national president of the Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, Nasima Diloye, has announced a partnership with South Africa, which is aimed at strengthening economic ties and leveraging the collective economic potential of both nations. So, Idausa, Nigeria strengthening ties with South Africa. What possible economic opportunities can both countries explore?
A lot. A lot. And I think these are the things that we should be actually looking at. Once the environment right, a lot of these conversations can begin to happen. And I think everybody's confidence is now being renewed somehow, that you are having an ecosystem that is friendly to investment. And so what this means is that every businessman has to look out for opportunity outside to come home and then do well. And so this for me is a good news coming from Nasima. And then, of course, looking at how we can partner with Africa. You know, the last time we were talking about African trading more with Africans.
Yes.
We're doing more business with ourselves because we are richer than the West, we are richer than Asia. So we have to exploit the opportunity that God had given to us as a people. And God brought us together, same color, same culture. We have to take advantage of this closeness and then build a robust economy so that Africa will no longer be underdog. But that's synonym of the eye of all the nations, where everybody wants to do business, live and have security, find safety, a good life, as it were.
You know, you talked about Africans doing business with Africans. Recently, President Tinubu was invited to India for the G20 Summit. You have these bodies, they have blocks like this, you know, and it's very beneficial to them. The president is considering joining a body like the G20 Summit. Does it benefit Nigeria or Africa in any way, being a part of that kind of?
Yeah, it should. You see, the real truth is that in the 1970s, specifically 1972, the vice president of India said publicly that India and the entire non-aligned states then, over 40 countries in the third world, were actually looking up to Nigeria for leadership for the third world, because there were a whole lot of great potential, both human and natural resources. And all of a sudden, the table turned and we seemed to be at the bottom. And I think this is where, of course, the Renew Hope agenda of Mr. President is actually coming, that Nigeria will begin to take its prime place among the Committee of Nations. We are supposed to be the leader of the third world. And when you're talking about successful economy, we should have been pointing to Nigeria, but we have missed a lot of opportunity. It's never late. So, but this is time now that we're having a president who really said, let's take away politics, let's focus on the principal thing, which is the economy. And once we can focus on the economy, we will arrive as one that has been called the giant, the sleeping giant, but now the giant that is awake.
Yes, and I think that President Bola Tinubu, being the chairman of ECOWAS, would do a lot in that aspect, facilitating trade within countries that are members of ECOWAS. And then you find that in other continents, they have a kind of partnership amongst themselves. Take, for instance, the EU, that facilitates trade amongst themselves. But what we found in Africa is that the unions are for political reasons. So I think Africa needs to look beyond playing politics, beyond coming together for political reasons to facilitating trade amongst themselves, because that is the only way that Africa can be formidable. Now the different unions, we have the BRIC, BRIC getting stronger and looking for African countries to become partner. It is when Africans come together and take a position, that is when Africa will be relevant in any of these unions. Else to just be, okay, be a member. And the same thing that has happened with other unions where Africa just plays the gallery and do the followership thing. That's what's going to happen. So until Africans begin to recognize that they have strength and they begin to explore that strength, first of all, within themselves, the cooperation is there. It'll just be a thing of completing the numbers for other countries or for other unions.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot is happening. Yesterday, the Minister for Solid Mineral had some agreement with the Australian High Commission, and then they were talking about partnership, exchange program to train Nigeria on the new technology of mining. This for me was also very outstanding. So, which means Nigeria is becoming the bride of the world. And I think, of course, we have to sustain this temple so that we can be where we should naturally be.
Okay, talking about Africa, let's get into sports, where 5 African players, including Nigeria's Victor Osimhen, Egypt's Mohamed Saleh, Cameroon's Andre Onana, and Morocco's Yassine Bono, are in contention for the prestigious Ballon d'Or award. I feel like it also includes global stars like Kylian Mbappe. I feel like celebrating, because I can't remember when was the last time a Nigerian player was included for prestigious awards such as Ballon d'Or. It's been a long time. And Victor Osimhen, you've not gotten it yet, but I just feel like celebrating you already. Do you feel that's the way?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
I think we shouldn't just feel like celebrating. We should
actually celebrate.
Yeah, because this is a big deal, I'm telling you. And then don't even forget Asisa Doshola.
Wow.
Oh, my God.
It's about time. It's about time for our constituency. You know what I mean.
I do. And much respect for that constituency.
Yeah.
It's made us very proud. And the girls have done well in terms of playing football in Africa and globally. They have represented us well. And we just can only hope that she gets this honor.
Absolutely.
And other Nigerians and Africans that are there. So well recognized, and they are appreciated for their effort. Good luck, Osimhen. Good luck, Oshala, for that
yes,
nomination.
Asisa Doshola has been very consistent when you talk about a female football player. She's been consistent in wins, in keeping in form, because that is one thing that we don't find consistent. You see a female player doing very well. After a year or two, you know, it's just as if, what happened to her? And then you find some people say, well, maybe marriage happened, family life happened, but she's been very consistent. And I join my voice to Ida also to say, congratulations, girl. Keep pushing for our constituency, you know?
Yes.
Vivian's constituency and mine.
Absolutely.
You have my support.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on now to Gabon, where the military leaders who held the deposed President Ali Bongo, they've released him from house arrest, granting him permission to travel abroad for medical checkups. Now, Ali Bongo suffered a stroke in 2018. And he was held under house arrest following the military seizure of power after a disputed 2023 presidential election. The decision to free him was attributed to his health condition and came under pressure from some organizations, although there are still calls for him to face justice over corruption allegations. But I think that being given freedom to seek medical treatment is like you were free for life. Afterwards, going abroad for medical treatment.
But not really. I think it's also showing the humanness of those who are the coup plotter to actually have allowed this person, of course, though he had corruption cases against him, of course, they said they're going to prosecute, but also look, they also put in value to life, which is important. And I think many African leaders should really understand this, that no matter how serious a crime of a person is, people must not be denying access to good health. Because you find that in some cases where people have infractions against the law and they are arrested, they are kept in custody, they are not allowed access to medical care, health deteriorating. And I think that's not a good sign for Africa, that people have the right to life. And that right is guaranteed by the Universal Declaration by United Nations, and we are all ratified those treaty of the United Nations, that no matter what the crime is, when people have health challenges, people should be magnanimous enough to give them the privilege to take care of their head before they answer the question of crime.
Absolutely. You know, what they say, health is wealth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is not to dispute what you just said about empathy. But, I mean, there's been talks by the opposition that this whole thing is a charade to deny him coming into power. Do you think this is like playing to the...
Well, it's also possible that, of course, it's a way to actually send him on exile. We can't tell, but I think from what is known that is official, that is allowed to go seek medical help without trying to read meanings to what is being intended. I feel for me is good for human rights practice, is good for a human rights record for the junta, and at least they are better than what is happening in jail. They put in place a transition program already, which means, of course, they don't intend to stay too long in power, but they also want to see how they can actually get that society working, because so rich in mineral, few population, but here there's been so much abuse over the years. And I think these are the issues for me that are of very clear concern.
No, so do you think the French is finally going to shake off? You know, this is like trying to shake off, you know, colonial...
The control of the French.
Yes.
Oh yes. And I think we just really need to wake up and grow up as Africans, especially the Francophone states that have been tied for too long to the apron string of the French government. That, of course, their economy are determined from Europe and not in Africa here. And this had actually created a whole lot of challenges. And you see, this is why when the coups are coming, people are celebrating. There's no light, for example, in Niger Republic. 70% of the light they get from Nigeria. And whereas the whole of Paris is powered by the uranium that is mined from Niger Republic.
What an irony.
So this is a contradiction, and I think that this is why a lot of African states are actually challenging and say, look, we need to be free. We have to be free to decide. We have independence, but we cannot decide for ourselves. For example, you see, over 50% of the reserve of the Francophone state warehouse in Paris, for example, in their treasury. And if they need the money, they have to borrow it at interest rate. That's outrageous, and these are real signs that, of course, these people are not free. And I think the kind of move that is going on right now, a lot of all these nations are going to set themselves free. Rwanda has set the example. You know, Rwanda changed their language completely to English, from French to English. And that happened. Mali is pursuing the same agenda. And I think it's time for Africans to really grow up.
You know, Blessing, I was going to pick your brains a little bit. I'm reacting. I want you to react to what he's just said. That these coups are coming up all over, you know, these countries because they want to shake off Francophone, you know.
Vestiges, yeah.
Right. But do you think a coup d'etat is the best way to do this? I mean, people say the worst democracy is better than, you know, a military government. I don't know what you think. I'm going to need him to speak to that as well.
Well, it is not just about shaking off the control of the French nation over some region of Africa alone, but it is about some African leaders that have abused power. So that's why it came through the form of coup. Ordinarily, there perhaps would have been some protests seeking revolution or a breakaway from the French control. But because some African leaders, particularly the ones in Niger and Gabon, have been seen by their people as people who've abused power, they've overstayed, they do not want to let go of power. So it's, first of all, it's like chasing two things, but we have to use one weapon to fight these two things.
So you're using a stone to kill
two birds. So it seems.
But you see, if you've looked at the conversation, take it from Nigeria, for example. The president of the NBA was saying the other day and said, look, we had our members across Nigeria to speak about the Nigeria election, for example. And we wrote our report on our observations on our elections. There's no community that don't have a lawyer.
Yeah.
We deployed over 1,000 men to polling units, real time. And we wrote a report. And then EU, that had no up to 50 people monitoring election, wrote a report on our election. And then the report of the EU seemed more credible than the report of the people who are on the ground. And what everybody, in short, of course, when, of course, the ruling was going on at the tribunal the other day, and the man said, look, the EU report is as useless as the paper that carried it. You see, this is the real issue, because most of the elections that are done in Africa seek legitimacy from the West.
From international observers.
And so, because they are seeking legitimacy, they don't really want to challenge those status quo. And this is why you see that this is coming via coup. Yeah, but because this one, you don't need their legitimacy. So you can actually speak to the issues the way they are. So you find that over the years, because we are seeking the validation of our colonial master, you can imagine that Nigerians that are doing elections, and we're having more debate in Chatham House than we are having in Nigeria.
Does it make sense?
It doesn't make any sense. So this is the position African democracy actually is. And we must need to shake ourselves of these vestiges of the colonial past so that we can hold our destiny in our hands.
No, I can't help but chip this in that the concept of data localism is what is key for Africa. Not seeking data from outside, not seeking validation of the data from international observers or from international bodies. Now, the effect of colonization, which left the legacy of neocolonization, is what Africa is actually battling with right now. And so you're having the revolution coming different from. Remember that at the African Climate Summit, some Africans actually protested the agenda, the participation of multinationals at that summit, and they wanted the summit and this agenda to be championed by African-led experts. So there's been like a shift around Africa, wanting to change the narrative of how things have been. So I think that, well, while coup may not have been the right way to go, it seemed like the only option for those countries. But I hope that the military junta in those countries would actually do the right thing and ensure a transition process that would bring to bear a government that would actually pursue true leadership, that would actually pursue the interest of their people, so we can have development in Africa. Because otherwise, it'll just be us fighting ourselves at the end of the day.
We say no to coup from here. And we're saying, Africa citizens, wake up. Take your destinies in your own hand.
Yeah.
Yes.
Understand that you are made by God with an inalienable right to be free and not to be governed from elsewhere. That you have the capacity to govern yourself. And this is what we are speaking to, that we will not need to seek validation from Western country to be who we should be. We can be all that God had made us to be.
And
Well
if we don't
said.
do that,
Well
we'll just be indirectly annexed.
Well.
All right, now let's take a last story, which talks about the African Finance Corporation, AFC, backed by Nigeria's central bank and several African financial institutions, affirming its commitment to fossil fuel investment despite increasing global efforts to transition towards renewable energy sources. Okay, more investment for fossil fuel investment. They've already talked about that coming up despite global effort to transition towards renewable energy. Should we be making more investments in fossil fuel, or the focus should be strictly on renewable energy, Idelsa?
Well, I think our president has made this very clear why the campaigns were on, and I think my position aligns really greatly with his position. Yeah, why we are transiting from fossil fuel to renewable energy, we must also understand that it comes with its own costs. And that was why the president says, look, if the West say, oh, there's so much that is done to climate and we want to change to renewable energy, we need to, first of all, power our civilization such that we are able to actually earn the money to transition. Otherwise, what you do for us is that since you are the one creating the trouble for us, give us money so that we can use it to transition. But if you are not giving us money to transition, and this will lead us to borrow, then let's use what we have to get what we want. And I think this is the conversation. And Africa must really look at this because God gave us this thing in nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
we have to use it for our good.
Absolutely.
And use it responsibly.
Absolutely. So, which brings me to my question. Do you smell rat here? This whole thing about transitioning to renewable energy. Some people have even dubbed it politics.
Oh yes, there's so much of rat to smell. Because if you have read Kwame Nkrumah's work, Neocolonialism, the last phase of imperialism, you will see this well documented. How the West tend to move trade around in Africa. What they do is that once they have developed a technology, they find a way to criminalize some aspect of trade in favor of the new technology. And this has always happened. And if you know about rubber business, when they started to discover rubber, they had to say, look, no to rubber. And of course, because we didn't have technology to convert rubber, now we have cut down all our rubber plantations. Now, when, of course, they were not able to get cocoa to do so much they want, and the prices was going on in the international market, they are developing concentrates, and then they are shifting the goalpost. So this had happened all through history. So this is why when these conversations are going on, Africans also need to open their eyes to see, yes, we believe in what you're saying, we also must own our research. To be sure, so that we can have an alternative voice to what is coming from the West. To see that it is not just a ploy to rip African off. The last time, of course, when they were having this summit in London, and of course the Chinese ambassador was saying, look, the Europeans promise that they are going to invest X amounts of money to help people cope with climate change. Where's the disbursement? Where is the money? So when we met in Paris this last COP27, the conversation was say, how do we refinance the debt? So this is always the conversation. So we as Africans must realize that our destiny is in our hands. And we must not allow people to determine it. We must know what is good for us and what is not good for us, and not allow other people to determine what should be good for us and what should not be good.
Yeah, and I think the way to remove all the rats out of a house is to have homegrown solutions. Yeah. That way we can own it, we can develop our economy through homegrown solutions.